Ladies and gentlemen, a special thanks to my sister, Amanda, for her support during the early phase. But as of tonight, she is officially retiring, so the real owners can take this vision into the future. My brother's voice boomed through the speakers. He didn't stutter. He didn't flinch. He just stood there on the raised platform, wrapping his arm around his fiancée, Sarah, and erased my existence with a smile. Let's hear it for the true heart of this restaurant, my co-founder, Sarah. The crowd cheered. My parents clapped. And just like that, 3 years of labor and $450,000 of my investment were transferred to a woman who had only chosen the napkin colors. I stood there, holding a glass of champagne I had paid for, in a room I had built, realizing I wasn't a partner anymore. I was a ghost. Before I show you how my brother's greed cost my parents their entire life savings in exactly 12 minutes, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I want to see just how far this story travels. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I didn't even blink. While the applause washed over the room, I took a slow sip of my water and looked up at the ceiling. Specifically, at the imported crystal chandeliers. $12,000 each. I knew the price because I wired the money for them 3 months ago when Justin claimed the domestic ones weren't visionary enough. I looked at the marble bar top where Sarah was currently leaning, posing for photos. $18,000. Paid for by my emergency liquidation of a bond portfolio. They saw a party. I saw a spreadsheet. My name is Amanda. I am 32 years old, and for the last decade, I have been the invisible spine of this family. I don't need accolades. I deal in logistics, high-risk financing, and solving problems that make other people hyperventilate. But tonight, as I watched my parents beam with pride at the son who had just publicly executed my reputation, I realized something. They never asked if I was tired. Not once in 3 years. To them, I wasn't a person. I was like the electrical wiring inside the walls. Essential. Carrying a lethal amount of current. But completely invisible. You only notice the wiring when the light bulb flickers. You only think about it when the power goes out. And watching Justin smirk at me from the stage, I realized that for my entire life, I had been keeping the lights on for people who preferred to leave me in the dark. Well, tonight, I was going to show them what absolute darkness looked like. The memory hit me then, sharp and cold. I looked at Justin's triumphant face. But my mind snapped back to a rainy Tuesday 3 years ago. He was sitting at my kitchen table, weeping into his hands because no bank in the state would touch him. His credit score was below 500. He had a bankruptcy on record. He wanted to open this restaurant, and he needed $450,000. Please, Mandy, he had begged, using the nickname I hated. Mom and Dad will lose their minds if they know I failed again. You're the genius. You can fix this. I'll do whatever you say. I'll make you a partner. 50-50. And I fixed it. I always fixed it. But I wasn't stupid. I knew a traditional loan was impossible. So I leveraged my own assets and structured a merchant cash advance. A brutal, high-interest commercial instrument that fronted the money against future credit card sales. But because his credit was trash, the lenders required collateral. Serious collateral. I looked over at my parents' table. Susan and Richard were laughing, clinking glasses with the mayor. They had no idea that the deed to their 4-bedroom colonial house, the house I grew up in, was sitting in a fireproof safe in downtown, attached as the primary security for that $450,000. I had told Justin to explain it to them. He swore he did. He swore they signed the papers knowing the risk. But looking at their unburdened joy tonight, I knew he had lied. He had probably told them it was just standard paperwork. You should be happy for him, my sister Megan whispered, leaning in from the seat next to me. She was 28 and had perfected the art of strategic blindness. Why do you always have to look so intense? It's a party. I'm very happy, Megan, I said, my voice steady. I'm just doing some mental accounting. I wasn't the victim here. Victims are helpless. I was the architect. I had built the floor they were dancing on, and I had built the trap door beneath it. Justin thought he had fired me. He thought he had cut the dead weight. He didn't understand that he hadn't cut a rope. He had cut the fuse wire on a bomb he was standing on. I reached under the table and unlocked my phone. The screen glowed in the dim light. I didn't need to make a scene. I didn't need to scream. I just needed to access the admin panel I had coded myself. They wanted me to retire? Fine. I would take my infrastructure with me. I didn't stand up. I didn't flip the table. I didn't throw my drink in Justin's face. Amateurs make scenes. Professionals make adjustments. I rested my phone on the white tablecloth, shielded by a floral centerpiece. To anyone watching, I was just checking a text message. To the digital infrastructure of the Golden Oak, I was God. I opened my email client first. The draft was already there, sitting in the outbox like a loaded gun. It was addressed to the State Alcohol Beverage Control Board, copying the local enforcement division. The subject line was dull. Immediate surrender of liquor license number 44-9021. The body of the email was brief, stating that as the sole guarantor and license holder, I was terminating operations effective immediately. I tapped send. The little blue arrow whooshed across the screen. In that microsecond, every drop of alcohol in this building went from a high-margin asset to a criminal liability. Serving the next glass of champagne wasn't just a service violation. It was now a felony. But legal paperwork takes time to filter down to the ground level. I didn't have time. I needed something visceral. I switched apps. The custom point-of-sale interface loaded in blue and gray. I had configured this system myself, linking the inventory, the kitchen display screens, the bar tabs, and the sound system into one streamlined, cloud-based network. Justin loved it because it was sleek. He forgot that sleek means centralized, and centralized means a single point of failure. I typed in my admin key. The dashboard turned red. System lockdown. It asked for confirmation. Revoke all user access and freeze operations. I looked up at the stage. Justin was leaning into the microphone, his arms still around Sarah, laughing at some joke about how hard they had worked to get here. He looked so confident. So safe. He really thought the floor he stood on was solid concrete, not a trapdoor I had installed 3 years ago. Goodbye, Justin. I whispered. I pressed confirm. The effect was instantaneous. It started with the sound. The smooth jazz playlist that had been floating through the surround speakers cut out with a sharp, electronic pop. The room fell into a jagged silence, punctured only by the clinking of silverware and the confused murmur of 300 guests. Then, the light show began. The smart lighting system, which I had programmed to dim and warm the room, reset to factory default. The warm amber glow vanished, replaced by blinding, harsh fluorescent white overheads. It looked like an interrogation room. Guests squinted, shielding their eyes. The ambiance was murdered in a blink. At the bar, 10 feet away, I heard the head bartender tapping frantically on his screen. "It's frozen," he hissed to his backup. "It just went black. I can't open the cash drawer." The kitchen doors swung open. The executive chef, a man Justin had poached from a rival with a signing bonus I paid for, stormed out, wiping his hands on his apron. He looked frantic. "The screens are down," he shouted, forgetting the guests were right there. "The order's just wiped. I don't know what table gets the sea bass." Chaos. Beautiful, synchronized chaos. Waiters froze in the aisles, their handheld ordering tablets turning into useless bricks. The credit card terminals beeped a collective error tone. The flow of money, the lifeblood of this entire party, stopped dead. Justin stood on stage, blinking in the harsh fluorescent glare. He tapped the microphone. Nothing. The sound system was locked out too. He looked like a mime trapped in a box. His smile faltered, twitching at the corners. He looked at the sound booth, then at the bar, then at the kitchen. Panic is a smell, and it was starting to drift off him in waves. I picked up my fork and took a bite of the salad. It needed more acid. Justin didn't walk off the stage. He jumped. He moved through the crowd like a linebacker, shoving past confused investors and a very startled city councilman. His face, usually a mask of practiced charm, was twisted into something feral. He knew. Of course he knew. He didn't know how I did it. Technology to him was just magic that happened in the background. But he knew who held the wand. He reached my table in 10 seconds flat. "What did you do?" he hissed, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and genuine terror. "Turn it back on. Right now." He didn't ask why. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't even pause to consider that maybe, just maybe, kicking the person who controlled the oxygen supply out of the airlock was a bad strategic move. He just demanded compliance. It was muscle memory. "I can't," I said, setting down my fork. "I'm retired. Remember? Don't play games with me, Amanda." He slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "Fix the system. The investors are watching." "They certainly are," I noted, glancing around. The room had gone from a celebration to a crime scene of awkward whispers. "And I think they're wondering why the co-founder isn't fixing it. Isn't Sarah the heart of this restaurant? Let her reboot the servers." That was the match in the powder keg. Justin grabbed my water glass and swept it off the table. It shattered against the marble floor. A wet, violent crash that silenced the few people who were still talking. "You jealous petty bitch," he shouted. And then came the cavalry. My parents, Richard and Susan, flanked him like bodyguards protecting an erratic prince. My mother looked at me with pure venom. "How could you?" she demanded, clutching her pearls. "This is your brother's big night. You're ruining everything because you can't stand to see him happy. You've always been jealous of him. Jealous? I repeated, looking at the man sweating through his expensive suit. Mom, I paid for the suit he's wearing. I paid for the floor you're standing on. I'm not jealous. I'm just closing my account. You are destroying this family, my father bellowed, pointing a finger in my face. Fix the lights. Apologize to Sarah. Do your job. Do your job. Not be our daughter. Do your job. That was it. The final confirmation. They didn't see a person sitting here. They saw a malfunctioning appliance. A toaster that refused to toast. And you don't reason with a broken toaster. You hit it until it works, or you throw it away. Justin straightened up, adjusting his jacket. He saw Sarah watching him, looking terrified and confused. He needed to regain control. He needed to be the alpha. No, Justin said, his voice loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. She's not going to fix it. We don't need her. We never needed her. He pointed at the exit. You are trespassing, he announced, trying to summon the authority of a CEO. You are fired. You are banned from this property. Get out of my restaurant before I have you dragged out. He thought he was winning. He thought he was banishing the villain. He didn't realize he was giving me exactly what I needed to trigger the endgame. Fine, I said, standing up. I'm going. I didn't argue. I didn't look back at my parents. I just picked up my clutch, smoothed my dress, and turned toward the door. Fine, I repeated. I'm going. I took 3 steps toward the exit. That was all I needed. Not so fast. Justin lunged. He moved faster than I expected, driven by a panicked realization that the trespasser was walking away with the only device capable of restarting his party. He cut across my path, blocking the double doors, and grabbed the strap of my laptop bag hanging from my shoulder. You're not leaving with company property, he snarled, yanking the bag hard enough to make me stumble. That laptop has client data on it. You're stealing from the company. It was a lie. And a clumsy one. The laptop was mine, purchased with my personal card 3 years ago. The client data was a spreadsheet I had built from scratch. But in the heat of the moment, with adrenaline flooding his system, Justin didn't care about facts. He cared about leverage. He wrenched the bag from my shoulder. The strap burned my skin as it slid off. Security, he shouted, waving at the 2 uniformed officers standing near the entrance. They were off-duty city police, hired for the event to keep out crashers. Now, they were Justin's personal enforcers. Officer, she's stealing proprietary data. Arrest her. The officers moved in. They saw a hysterical business owner pointing at a woman trying to leave with electronics. They didn't see a sister. They saw a suspect. Ma'am, stop right there, the taller officer said, stepping in front of me. His hand rested instinctively on his belt. We need to sort this out. You're going to have to stay put. I looked at Justin. He was clutching my bag to his chest, breathing hard, a triumphant smirk breaking through his panic. He thought he had me. He thought he could use the law to bully me into submission, just like he used our parents. She's a disgruntled former employee, Justin told the officers, his voice loud enough for the press to hear. She's trying to sabotage the opening. I want to press charges for corporate espionage. My parents rushed over, their faces a mask of relief. Thank goodness. My mother breathed, looking at the police. Officer, she's been acting erratic all night. She's clearly not well. Please, just take the computer back so we can restart the party. Megan, I said, looking past them to my sister. She was standing by the coat check, watching with wide eyes. Megan, you know that laptop is mine. You were with me when I bought it. Megan looked at me. Then she looked at Justin, who was holding the bag like a trophy. She looked at our parents, who were nodding at the police. She looked at the crowd of VIPs watching the drama unfold. And she looked away. I don't know, she mumbled, staring at the floor. I think maybe the company paid for it. The betrayal didn't hurt. It just clarified things. All right, ma'am, the officer said, his tone hardening. You're being detained for investigation of theft. We're going to need you to come with us to the back room until we can verify ownership. He took my arm. Not gently. He guided me away from the exit, back into the glare of the emergency lights, parading me past the guests I had invited. I saw the whispers. I saw the phones raised, recording. The jealous sister arrested at the grand opening. It was the perfect narrative. Justin watched me go, his chest puffing out. He had won. He had the laptop. He had the police. He had the family. But as the officer led me toward the manager's office, I didn't struggle. I didn't plead. I just felt the cold, heavy weight of the manila envelope tucked inside my dress jacket. The one document Justin hadn't grabbed because he was too focused on the computer. He thought he had trapped me. He didn't realize he had just locked himself in the cage with the tiger. The back room was small, smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. I sat on a metal folding chair, my hands folded in my lap, watching the officer fill out a property receipt for my laptop. Justin was pacing back and forth near the door like a caged tiger. He was vibrating with adrenaline, checking his phone every 3 seconds, probably looking for validation from his sycophants. My parents stood in the corner, holding each other, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment. "We didn't want it to end this way, Amanda," my father said, his voice heavy with paternal judgment. "If you had just apologized. If you had just accepted your role." "Save it, Richard," I said. "I'm saving my breath for the lawyer." "Oh, he's here," Justin snapped, spinning around with a shark-like grin. "And he's going to bury you." The door opened, and Mr. Henderson walked in. He was the family attorney, a man who had handled my father's estate planning and Justin's previous DUI. He wore a suit that cost more than my car and carried a leather briefcase that screamed billable hours. He looked at me not as a person, but as a problem to be erased. "Amanda," he said, sitting opposite me and placing a recorder on the table. "This is a mess. Corporate espionage, grand larceny, disruption of commerce. The district attorney takes these things very seriously. You're looking at 5 to 10 years. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But, because you're family, Justin is willing to drop the charges. If you sign a full release of claims, return all company data, and agree to a restraining order. Tonight." Justin crossed his arms, smug satisfaction radiating off him. "Sign it, Amanda. Or go to jail." The officer looked at me, waiting. He expected me to crumble. He expected tears. Instead, I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer. Justin flinched, as if I were pulling a weapon. In a way, I was. "Officer," I said, my voice calm and clear. "Before we discuss theft, I think you should see the document that establishes ownership of this business." I slid the manila envelope onto the table. It wasn't the laptop. It was a single, thick contract, bound in blue legal paper. V.